Viewers, moving on to some international news coming in. Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced a partial ceasefire in Ukraine, calling it an Easter truce. The temporary halt in fighting, which the Kremlin says is guided by humanitarian reasons, is set to last from Sunday evening to early Monday. But skepticism remains high, especially from Kyiv, over whether this move signals genuine intent or a strategic pause.
Russian President Vladimir Putin declared a temporary Easter ceasefire in Ukraine on Saturday. Citing humanitarian considerations, Putin announced the temporary halt to fighting from 8:30 p.m. on Sunday to Monday midnight during a televised address.
Out of humanitarian consideration, from 18 hours from 6 p.m. until midnight, the Russian Federation declares an Easter truce. I order for this period to stop all the hostilities for this period from 6 p.m. until midnight, considering, and we expect the Ukraine to follow this example. At the same time, we need to be ready to fend off any aggression coming from Ukraine.
The announcement came on the same day as Russia's defense ministry said that its forces pushed Ukrainian troops from one of their last remaining footholds in Russia's Kursk region. Earlier last year, Ukrainians had staged a surprise incursion in Kursk. A unilateral cessation of fighting. Ukrainian air defense units were fighting off an attack by Russian drones when Putin decided to halt the war. However, Ukrainian foreign minister said that Putin cannot be trusted. Previous attempts at holding ceasefires for Easter in April 2022 and Orthodox Christmas in January 2023 were not implemented after both sides failed to agree on them. Putin's push for a temporary peace also comes a day after US Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued a warning that no progress is made in halting the war, Washington could walk away. Meanwhile, Zelensky lashed at Putin in a strongly worded social media post, slamming him for playing with human lives on Easter. And while occasional humanitarian ceasefires, prisoner exchanges and grain export agreements provide temporary relief, path to comprehensive peace remains far.
Viewers, despite US's continued offensive against the Iran-backed Houthi rebels of Yemen, both Tehran and Washington seem committed to continue with their negotiations over the former's nuclear program, and the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has met with US envoy Steve Witkoff in Rome to hold second round of talks after their first meeting in Muscat.
Iran and the United States resumed a fresh round of nuclear talks in Rome on Saturday in an attempt to resolve their long-standing dispute over Tehran's nuclear ambitions. The Oman-mediated indirect talks took place between Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and US envoy Steve Witkoff. The dialogue unfolds under the looming threat of military action from President Donald Trump if diplomatic efforts collapse. Earlier this month, the head of International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, warned that Iran is not far from possessing a nuclear weapon. Although Iran and the US termed the first round of talks constructive, they later clashed over respective demands and limits of a potential deal. When Witkoff said Iran must dismantle its uranium enrichment program, Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi called the issue non-negotiable. However, there was some optimism in the statement of Iranian Foreign Minister after Rome talks ended. Hailing the talks constructive, Araghchi said he can see it moving forward. Main negotiators are now set to hold a third round of talks in Oman to assess the situation on April 26.